Hello. Um, could you please let me know, the viewers, that I'm properly audible and visible? You can write a response in the chat box so that I know that the system is working all right. Right. So I've got some responses about the audio visuals. So because this is an independent event and I do not have a team, um, so I'm just making sure that the equipment is working all right. Right. So first of all, welcome to this event, applying for a PhD in English Literature in the UK. My name is Shaurik Bhattacharya. I am a lecturer in English Literature at the University of Glasgow. I completed my PhD in English and Comparative Literary Studies at the University of Warwick, which is in England, and Glasgow in Scotland, I'm sure many of you will know. So broadly, the UK, if the viewers, many of you, if you may not know, the UK is England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland. So I have a fair bit of knowledge about PhD applications and what it means to apply for a PhD. At the same time, what are the requirements and the kind of life that you have as a PhD in the UK. So when I was applying, in 2000, late 2012, I started my coursework, my PhD in September 2013. So the process started fairly from end of 2000, sort of October, November 2012. I was sort of looking for opportunities and sort of PhD positions. So the only way, for me was to find out through sort of websites and so talk to my professors, to my teachers and colleagues to find out what is happening there. The situation is not so easy to sort of understand how to go about them. So I thought, like, now that after like almost 7 or 8 years, I feel I feel like this this is a very complex procedure, the application process. But if you know the steps, you'll know that this is not so complex as it looks in the beginning. So this is the whole point of this event, or a series of events that I'm going to be doing, is to make sure that viewers and make sure that people know that especially PhD aspirants know what they need to do, what they need to remember while applying for a PhD in the UK, especially now in the post Brexit and in the global coronavirus situation. I think some of these aspects become even more important, and this is the point. This is the main reason for doing this kind of an activity. The second thing is that this is just one of a six-part series that I have kind of thought about, and this is going to be, so the first one, of course, is PhD application. Second one is going to be on drafting a research proposal, then on funding, then on sort of job prospects, etc. Especially with the UK contexts in mind, the experience and expertise that I have, and experience and knowledge that I have. I can't talk about other sort of continents or countries. So this is something that I'm thinking about right now. And I can, of course, talk a little bit about India, but my experience is mostly related to the UK. So this is going to be a series, a six-part series. So some of you, if you are interested, of course, you can follow these things up. But at the same time, I would like to say that this is an independent series of events. I'm not sponsored by any person, any group, or any institution. And as you can understand from the video, or maybe like the way I'm doing it, that this is pretty much amateur, and I do not have anybody other than me, kind of a team of people, etc., doing these things, helping me out. So I'm going to be pretty much looking at chat box, reading out sort of comments and questions and responding to you. So what I would like to remind you, sort of a housekeeping remembrances, will be that please ask your questions at the end or during the end of the talk, so that I can see the questions and I can sort of what I'm going to be doing, because this chat boxes, I'm not very sure these conversations remain after the event is over. So what I'm going to be doing is taking some of these questions, like the one on screen, some of these questions on screen, so that if the as long as the video, this event will be there on YouTube, your questions will be live. So many of these questions will already be responded to, and I'm sure, like, without reading them out, responding to questions and answers and having this video for years will be a little bit weird. So that is what I'm planning to do. So please have your questions later on, during the later part of the talk, and you can always sort of post your comments throughout as you want. And the second thing is that because it's going to be a series of events, so please feel free to subscribe to this channel. This is also because I'm not always sharing these things widely on social media. So this will allow you to have an independent track of events, and to see a few more subscribers will also encourage me to do a few more events like that. It's all like I'm making sure that I can do as many events in that sense. Between July and September, the plan is to have fortnightly basis, 2 events each month. From October, things will be very busy. So thank you so much once again for coming to this event, and let us move on to the section about applying for a PhD in English literature in the UK. So what I'm going to be doing now is sharing a screen. I have made a PowerPoint for you, and you can have an understanding of what is there for you to think about, for applying. And I think this shouldn't take more than 20-25 minutes. And after that, I've kept 1 hour for question and answer sessions. And I can sort of extend the time a little bit, but I'm sure like I'll be able to answer. I'm very happy to take questions and any queries you have, and sort of able to respond. And to sort of, even later on as well. So I'm just going to be sharing my screen now. Uh, Right. So could somebody tell me if you can share the screen on your YouTube video panel? As soon as you give me a green signal, I'll go and talk about these sort of slides. Can you see my PowerPoint slide applying for PhD in English literature in the UK? Okay, great. So I've already got a few responses. I'll go move on. So as you can see, there are 8 things I have sort of jotted down. So these are, as you can see: topic, supervisor compatibility, English language requirements, fees and funding, application components, application period and outcome, visa, and life in the UK. Right. Yeah, I can see that there is a question about making it full screen, but I'm not very sure if it can be done full screen from here. Right. Right. So yeah, this looks all right. So this is the first point about choosing a topic. And because I've also have to have an eye about whether I'm changing the slides all right, and you can sort of see, so I'm just also making sure that sometimes I have the sort of this share button option on. So I'll share the PPT later on as well, but as we move on, let me have this in this sort of in non-entire screen format, so that I can have a tab on the share screen option. So this is the window, right? So choosing a topic. So the first one, as I wanted to tell you about, is choosing a topic. Now, this is very important. I mean, I think everything begins with what you plan to choose and want to work on. And this is something that you would have to sort of decide independently. Okay, like something that interests you. You can, by when I say independently, I mean to say that you would have to make sure that you have interest in the topic, you have you want to say something new, you also know that this topic is relevant, and more importantly, you can continue to have interest in the topic for some time. This is very important because what happens is when we choose a topic, we choose we are just completing our MAs. We have just been opened out, exposed to a wonderful set of literary theories and topics, etc. But what happens is that we feel increasingly impatient about topics, which one will be really important at this point of time. Somebody could talk about, sort of medicine and literature. Somebody could talk about environment and literature. These are like breakthrough areas, cutting edge areas that are coming up right now. At the same time, there are textual criticism based work that have been going on for a long time, and that have never sort of lost any relevance in the literary fields. So somebody could talk about, let's say, textual criticism, a textual based study in, let's say, Shakespeare, or even a more updated study such as comparing, maybe, like, finding out Shakespeare's sort of plays, how they have been adapted in the, let's say, Indian or Brazilian contexts. So these will always be depending on, kind of interest that you have, maybe in an author, maybe in a period, maybe in a particular cutting edge area. It's all up to me. It's an important task to think about the topic, and then to talk to people about the topic, and more importantly, to read widely about the topic. That will be very important. So if you have chosen about Shakespeare, how the Shakespeare has been adapted in the Indian context, then see what kind of adaptations have taken place, what their sort of, adaptations or, improvisations have been, and then, how, what kind of contribution that could make to a new field of study. PhD by default is something which is original, an original kind of a, sort of a study, point of study, sort of a contribution to knowledge. So that's something you need to remember. And then, as you can see, what previous work has been done on it is very important. What kind of previous work has been done on it, what new area or ideas you are bringing forth, and very importantly, research questions that you need to address, the kind of research questions that will be key, the kind of research questions that are new, exciting, that the research questions should be very clearly mentioned, that these are the questions, one or two or three, whatever. This is the main question, these are the two sub questions. And then, of course, why you think this topic is interesting, important, what kind of scope this topic has. Okay, so think about the topic, take your time to think about the topic very clearly, and then write about it, like prepare sort of a research proposal based on the topic. So that will be your first work. Second thing will be about supervisor. Now, this, as I said, this is key, finding a supervisor, because this is key to the UK process, and that is what I've found out. In the US, or maybe elsewhere, maybe Singapore or somewhere else, what happens is, what you are enrolling yourself into is a graduate program. That means that you will be doing 2 years of coursework, something like that, 1 year or 2 years of coursework. You are a graduate student over there, and this 2 years of coursework is pretty much tantamount to what you have done as an MA student in 2 years of MA in India, or elsewhere, 1 year of MA elsewhere. So what happens is, you are a graduate, you are into a graduate program in the US, but in the UK, you join as a PhD student, as a PhD candidate. You are expected to have done your MA and all your coursework during the MA. There is no coursework additionally in the UK. And this is the UK PhD is a 3 year, process. You can extend it up to 4, but it's mainly a 3 year process, rather than the USA, which is more of a 5 to 7 years process. Okay, so think about that very clearly. The 3 year process is not very far, and fundings, as will talk about later on, fundings are going to be mostly about 3 years, and on very rare occasions 3.5 years, etc. So supervisor compatibility is key to the UK process. So what you have to do, as I say in the next points, write to them, find out if, once you are done with the topic, prepare a research proposal, find out if a supervisor will be interested in your work. Usually, supervisors, prospective supervisors, or sort of faculty members in the UK, they are very enthusiastic about replying very soon. And if they're interested, then they'll talk to you. And sort of send you emails, ask you for more work, etc. And that's how the things go here in the UK. This my experience has been. And what happens is, I would rather suggest you do it a couple of months before you plan to start the application procedure. Maybe like, somewhere in August or September, because if you're planning for maybe like a January 2021, or maybe like later on, even if you're planning for later September 2021, then maybe slightly later, but have some time in hand. And why I say August and September, it's tricky because August and September are when supervisors, like faculty members in the UK will also take sort of summer breaks, or research oriented leave, etc., holiday leave, etc. But um, during term time, it becomes immensely more difficult for people to reply. So term time, for those who do not know, term time is between September and early December, and again between January, sort of mid January till June. This is the term time. Between July and September, mostly this is summertime and research time. That's how things tentatively. It's not anywhere it's written that it's research time, but it's when you can do sort of develop your research slightly more. The workload is slightly lighter. That's when people can do sort of research, right? Um, then let us now. So, what do you send to your supervisor? You send your CV and your research proposal. That's all. You write a few lines that like I'm interested, etc., etc. And this is my CV and this is my research proposal. If they are interested in the topic and the research proposal, not more than 1,000 words. Make sure that be kind to your prospective supervisor. They're reading a lot. They're doing a lot of other things, so they can't read a lot during this particular period. You can always send your research proposal to your supervisor, not more than 1,000 words. Now, this is what I say here is not compulsory. It is not compulsory to approach your supervisor beforehand, because if you approach the university will send it to the English department PG convener, and the PG convener will talk to you mainly. And then the PG convener might then approach a particular supervisor, thinking whether they will be interested in the topic. Why I say it is key to the UK process, because supervisors are so important and key to the process. And because you straight away enroll into the PhD program without a coursework, so some knowledge about your supervisor and how they are and what they think about your research will be useful before you join in. That's if you're planning to. That's the kind of a deal here. It's not compulsory, as I say. So it also asks you to draw a list of prospective supervisors, because, as I say, people are busy and people's position might be full. PhD positions, I mean. So you can have at least a few supervisors, prospective supervisors, faculty members in mind before applying to. At the same time, also do check university resources, records, libraries, because you're not only going to be doing a PhD with a supervisor, but also with a university, and we were definitely reading a lot in the library, spending a lot of time in the library, and also the city. So everything will be very important. So have an understanding of the supervisor and a few questions you can ask. Of course, as I said, be kind to them and make sure that the sort of you ask as minimum, because at this point of time people are extremely busy replying to longer questions. But of course, you as long as there is a conversation going on, there is interest from the supervisor's front, you can sort of always sort of ask a few more questions that are absolutely pressing, or maybe like direct your questions to the PG convener. And finally, give them at least a couple of weeks time to respond, because, as I said, it is increasingly busy in term times, increasingly busy, and non-term times people might have different preoccupations. So give them a couple of weeks time at least before sort of reminding them of your emails. Then this is the third very important. Now, once you are done with the topic and you've got a prospective supervisor's interest and you want to follow it up for an application, this is something that will be absolutely very important. English language requirements, which is slightly sort of, which is of course like sort of gives you a level playing field from where you are, but that's slightly more strange for an English literature candidate, because in many cases you've already done years and years and months of English language writing, and then some of these tests that I talk about, they're going to cost you some money, some sort of expenses. So be prepared. If you are planning to apply for an English language requirement test, be prepared that this will cost you some money, and there are dates, appointments. It takes some time. Okay, so most of the universities in the UK, they will ask you for some of these tests. These are standardized tests. Okay, so IELTS, which is done from the British Council, English language. This is like English language testing. Then again, test of English as a foreign language, that is TOEFL. Then Cambridge exams, that is CAE and CPE. Then Pearson test of English, Trinity College London, IAC. These are some of the sort of standardizing bodies that do these tests, and you will be given scores. Now, every university will have a list of marks, let's say the cutoffs, let's say. So IELTS is done a band of, I think, 9, and mostly universities want anything sort of more than 6 or 6.5, even some 7 or 7.5. In So there are 4 components: writing, reading, listening, and I think comprehension, was it? So there are 4 components. Whatever they are, you would have to have in total anything between 6 and 7.5, and even more. Even it's better to, of course, score higher to make sure that uh, there is not a question about sort of taking it twice or something like that. You can of course take it twice, but as I said, it's going to cost you a fortune. And then TOEFL, something, I think on a scale of 120, and anything that is more than 100, I think in total, should be all right, but aim for higher, of course. And these are all sort of Cambridge exams have their A and B, etc. Pearson, so go for them. Every university, their websites will have complete elaborate data about sort of what they want is in terms of English language requirements. Now, sometimes some of the universities might ask you that if you have been taught and instructed in English in college and universities, then you might also ask for your universities to issue a letter, sort of on letterhead, saying that you have done all these things in English. But while some of them had said that, I'm telling you, these wouldn't finally work when you apply for a visa, etc. They would still want some sort of a standardized score. So my suggestion will be to go for one of these if you're planning it, and these scores will be valid for 2 years. Now, the other thing is, if you are from a majority English speaking country, for instance, USA, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and then some of the Caribbean island countries, etc., you do not need to take some of these tests. You are exempted from these tests. And as I said, so this is a particular link that's there on the PowerPoint. So you can always get to, this is a UKVI Tier 4 student visa links of knowledge of English. So you can always see which countries are exempted from this particular English language requirement. And if your university has given you admission, but you haven't got, like, the required sort of IELTS or TOEFL score, like the standardized scores, you can still do pre-sessionals or English for academic purpose before joining your degree, so you have to probably arrive a little earlier than 2 months before or 3 months before, and do these things, pre-sessionals, pass them, and then move on to the degree. And finally, if you are thinking about pre-sessionals, etc., then still, that in order to do that, UKVI, which is like the United Kingdom visa issues, sort of visa and immigration authority, they require you to take a secure English language test, CELT. So this could be either IELTS Academic or Trinity College London, ISC, etc. So the point being, these are tests that you have to take if you're not coming from one of these majority English speaking countries, and they are going to sort of charge you some money. So just take it, make sure that you have this knowledge. I didn't have it beforehand, because I thought that I was doing English and I'd already be able to sort of pass these things, but I had to take IELTS, I think IELTS or TOEFL, before the full-fledged application process. Okay. Then fees and funding, absolutely key. Okay, and this is something that some everybody who is appearing for or planning for a PhD needs to take into consideration. Fees are higher on a very high sort of scale, and it depends, of course, because you might be on a financially, because that depends on what kind of a spectrum, sort of a position on a financially broad, diverse spectrum you're on. But this is roughly what you see on the page, is roughly what you're going to be charged for your 2021 annual fees. So for UK or EU, the annual fee is going to be £4,407 for full time and £2,644 part time. And if you are an overseas student, you can see the difference. You're supposed to be paying £18,800 for full time and £11,880 part time. So you can see that for the home and the overseas students, almost like a 5 times more, sort of 4.5 times or 4 times more overseas sort of tuition fees. So be very prepared if you're planning for some kind of a PhD in English literature, PhD in English literature, and you're planning to pay like a self payment basis. So this is something I just wanted to flag. And then, of course, there are fundings sort of and scholarships, and these are some of the examples of funding and scholarships. As I said before, please make sure if you are applying for a PhD in English literature, please make sure that you uh, have a very thorough knowledge of university websites regarding their postgraduate research pages, especially their postgraduate research pages. Every university in the UK will have a very strong, sort of well detailed, elaborate postgraduate research pages about fees and funding. And they will also, and on those pages, they'll also make sure that you know about the scholarships or the other funding, possibilities that they have, that they hold. So I'll just tell you a few names here, a few sort of examples. So, as I said, the universities have in-house scholarship schemes for fee reduction or fee waivering. So, sort of, you might be a EU, UK, or a overseas student, and you might apply for some of these in-house schemes for sort of tuition fees reduced to half, or sort of one-fourth, or a certain amount exempted, something like that. Almost most of the universities in the UK will have some form of fee reduction or waivering. When I say most, I say that there are at least 120 or 20, 30 universities in the UK. So, of course, by most, I mean universities which have the means to do so. Universities that are slightly more wealthy, they have their own sort of means to sort of, you know, kind of raise money. And the second one is, these are some of the national funding bodies. This is AHRC, which is Arts and Humanities Research Council, then British Academy, which goes with Wolfson Foundations, then Wellcome, which does mostly health related and medicine related humanities scholarships, and then Liverhume, which does broadly everything in the humanities. They have a lot of different kinds of areas and disciplines that they represent. So these are some of the scholarships, some of the sort of funding bodies, and they have their doctoral scholarship schemes. But it's very important to remember that these are national funding bodies, and I think apart from Wolfson and Wellcome funding bodies, all of these are for national EU, UK, and EU students. When I say national, it's also EU students. But as you understand, post Brexit, now that the UK has departed, like exited the EU, so we don't know whether this will be going to be sort of available for EU students for a long time. But for 2021, Glasgow at least reminded us that 2021 things will be as it was before. So EU could also apply for some of these scholarships. And for international students, I think Wolfson has a few scholarships, and Wellcome might have a few scholarships as well. For doctoral students, please check their websites regularly for updates. Some universities have full fees and maintenance based scholarships for home and international students. Now, these are very few. And as you can understand, humanities have had global funding cuts everywhere. And some of these universities are also making, like, some of the opportunities for humanities or literature based studies and getting full fees and maintenance scholarships are also getting sort of rare, few and far between. So what happens is, please make sure that you have an understanding of which universities is offering you full fees and maintenance based scholarships. So for example, I got one of these scholarships when I applied for my PhD at Warwick. It is called Chancellor's International Scholarship. Now that's a full fees and maintenance scholarship. I didn't have to pay anything. This is a really good one because it gives you a 3.5 year scholarship. And then there are a few from, for instance, Glasgow has a very few scholarships, and sort of handful for home and international students, that is in-house. Oxford and Cambridge will have, LSE, UCL, and then I think York and Edinburgh should have. So some of the universities in what they call the Russell group, like the top tier universities that they have sort of branded themselves with, some of the, let's say, some of the wealthier universities in the UK will have some provision for sort of full-time international, some provision for sort of scholarships for full-time international students for sort of full tuition fees and maintenance basis. But it might be a good, sort of very few and far between. So it's a good idea to check which universities have them and which do not have. It's a good idea to also run these things past your prospective supervisor, and your PGs, that is postgraduate conveners. There are also country specific scholarships such as China's Scholarship Council, Commonwealth scholarships, Said Foundation, etc., etc. These are things which you bring when you bring scholarships from your own country to study in the UK. Commonwealth scholarships are very popular from a country that I come from, India, and I'm sure, like many countries which have once formed part of, are part of the Commonwealth, of the UK Commonwealth, will of course have these scholarships available. And then Said Foundation, for instance, I think is for Palestine, Jordanian, Syrian sort of candidates. So these are China scholarships, of course, for Chinese students. Very popular again, scholarship body. So these are scholarships available in your country. And one good thing is that if you don't know about them, every university will have a page called country specific scholarship, where you will be asked this question, where you are from, and they'll then lead you to a scholarship body and what kind of scholarships are available for you. Finally, if you're planning to pay on your own, self-paid, then of course you can also sort of earn some money while you do your PhD. Part-time work available for international students, and this is restricted by international. I mean, as I said, home is UK, EU, international is outside, overseas. So 20 hours a week's work during term time, and full-time work during non-term time. As I said, term time is mostly between September and December, like early December, and then mid-January till sort of April or May, and it stretches till June sometimes. But as I say, as you can understand, the costs are very high. So make sure that if you are paying on your own, then make sure that you have a plan, you have a backup plan. You may go for student loans, you may go for housing society loans, or I mean, if you just entirely going to be paying for yourself and doing part-time, that might hugely affect your PhD studies and your mental health. It's going to be absolutely key for your PhD work, making sure that your mental health is all right, not and your physical health, of course. Some of these works will be hard. So point being, remember this part. And second part is that this is also something that has increasingly come to notice in the last few years, that funding, that if you are a funded PhD candidate, then chances of applying for another postdoc funding, or for a job, if slightly, that is, I mean, this is not a data driven, any kind of sort of data driven conclusion, but chances, the assumption says that chances of you, once funded, of getting funding for PhD or getting a job prospects may be slightly higher. As I said, I do not endorse this particular, this is not a data driven conclusion, but as you understand, one funding might just draw another funding. That if you have been funded already, then university applying for a postdoc, then the postdoc funding committee might see, okay, this student has already been funded, so he or she or they have already been proven, they have already proven this is a very harsh and competitive world, especially in the UK. So make sure that you know about what you know your ground, you know your sort of metal, and you know your ground. So this is something that I wanted to tell you about funding. And after this, we have the application components. So here you have. Now once you know about the funding aspects, once you know about sort of this application, your supervisor, your topic, once you know about what are the chances of yours, so have like a free talk, sort of a frank talk with your supervisor or with your PG sort of conveners about what kind of possibilities you get about whether your CV, whether your research proposal, whether you have the eligibility to apply any funding is that is eligible for you. Just go for them, as long as of course you're given an admission in the university. So these are the application components. So these are going to be important before you apply for funding. So the application form, sometimes it happens that the application form will have the funding form application as well. So once you apply, that means you're also considered for funding. Sometimes it happens that you get an admission and then you can only apply for funding. There will be a window of 1 or 2 months before you apply, after your application, after you're given an offer. So this is the application form. Then you things that you have to upload, you have to remember, these are the components. CV, I'll suggest make it professional, as much non-narrative as possible. Don't write descriptively in your CV what you have done. Just make sure that you just have the points and as clean as possible. By professional I mean discursive, as simple as, and and also use a simple layout. Don't add a lot of details to your CV. Just make sure that you have these important details, such as your educational qualification, your teaching, if you have any, your research, if you have presented seminar or conference presentations, or you have any publications, any extracurricular that might help the application. If you're working on something, such as Shakespeare's adaptation in India, and you have already done some work in theater, or in sort of any kind of artistic or art based, sort of performance art based work, that might also help the application process. But not add anything that doesn't go with the application. So anything that you add to the CV should, at the end of the day, make sure that this is helping the application, not like unnecessary details. And of course, at the end, add a couple of references. I'll talk about it later as well, references. So this is the second component. Third is transcripts. This is going to be time consuming. Transcripts are not degree certificates. Transcripts are something which you apply from your university. So you have to talk to your examination departments, your university, whoever that deals with it, so like HR or examinations or control. Sort of these are departments which will then ask you to apply for transcripts. There is a bit of a payment, like you have to pay for your transcripts. And these transcripts are ideally, what happens is, either they're handed over to you in closed seals, and which you have to then send or scan and send, whatever the procedure is, to the UK universities, or the universities themselves send them, I think on a minimal fee or something like that, to the particular universities. Now these are functions, these are procedures which are of course going to be different in different countries and universities. Okay, just make sure, like, if you're applying for a PhD, make sure that you have time for transcripts, collecting transcripts and sending them to universities. I didn't know about that as well. As I said, there are many things I didn't know about. So this is something that you should know, that transcripts are not degree certificates to apply for them. Then the research proposal, ideally, as I said, 1,000 words or little more, not more than 1,500 words, ideally between 2 and 4 A4 size pages. At most 2 pages are ideal, or at most 4 pages. And as I said, research proposal, as I already discussed in the topic section, what you should have in this particular proposal. And I'm planning to do one on drafting research proposal later, so I'm going to be talking about at length about it. And finally, references. You need at least 2 to 3 references from academics or professionals. Don't make your father or your sort of family member your reference point, because they are not going to be telling anything useful about your academics right now, what you were going through. They might just say, like, you have done very well. They're all going to be kind, but it's not going to help your sort of prospective supervisor or your funding body. So talk to your MA thesis supervisor, talk to your MA. If you do not have a thesis, then some of the professors, by professors I mean some of the faculty members, could be assistant, associate, professor, depends on who you talk to. But 2 to 3, have in mind that it depends, like it needs 2 to 3 references from these referees that will be then directed to the universities. Sometimes it happens that you might collect them yourself, scan and send. Sometimes it happens that they have to straight away send them, like email them to the university email addresses. So have, like, have a knowledge about which university wants what, and be careful about, sort of, these are all time consuming things, so it's a longer preparation sort of kind of a procedure. Then we have the penultimate one, the application period and outcome. So in most cases what happens is, sort of doctoral applications and decisions are made throughout the year, but you can join only in the autumn, that is September October phase. As I said, September till mid-December is the autumn period, and then from mid-January till maybe end of March, or the examinations will might go on till April, etc., will be the spring session. And then from after the examinations, June till or September will be the summer session. So mostly you can do application at any time you want, not a problem, but you will only be given offers or be allowed to join only in the autumn or in the spring sessions, either in September or in January. Remember that. Even if you've got an offer in March, you have to wait till September to join. Okay, so what happens is, when you are done with the application and you've been sort of given an offer, either you accept the offer, or you defer, or you reject. So what happens is, once you are done with every component, English, the components that I gave you, like English language requirement, and then sort of all the CV, like the full application form, etc., everything is done, then you are issued what I have written here, CAS, that is confirmation of acceptance for studies. That means this will be given a little later. First of all, you'll be given a conditional or unconditional offer. So why conditional? If something is missing, for instance, you have not yet submitted your English language requirement standardized score. So we have been given a conditional offer. Once you sort of submit that, they will sort of change it into unconditional offer. Only when you have unconditional offer, they will generate what they call CAS, confirmation of acceptance for studies. This is absolutely key. Without it, you can't apply for a visa. Until unless it comes to you, you'll have to wait. So, and it has a time period, time limit as well. CAS cannot be for a long time. It has a 3 months, 6 months sort of a window. So for one particular time period and acceptance, there is only one CAS. So you can either accept, you can also defer if you don't want it in, it is probably in September, but it needs to start in January. So you can defer as well, or you can reject, find something, you have found another offer and you were planning to reject that, or universities can reject. You know this drill already. And once you are done with application period and outcome, and you are ready to, you have accepted the offer, you'd have to pay for their tuition and maintenance fees. Now tuition fees are going to be on an annual basis. You have to pay for your tuition fees, whatever, like 4,000 or 18,000, or if you are already funded, then they will also draw the tuition fees, etc. And the maintenance fees is for the first month, and it's probably 600 something pounds or something. So you need to have this amount of money in your bank in order to apply for your visa. You need to either have this money, the tuition fees you have to either pay beforehand. Now these universities, I don't know which work on what matter, but you need to have your tuition fees and your 1 month's maintenance fees in your bank account before you go for a visa application. Finally, a couple of things. So tier 4 student visa, I'll go quickly here. UK VI application, this is a point-based system. Once you have got the offer, you have to apply for a visa. It's called tier 4 student visa. And and the sort of body that authorizes it called UKVI, as I said, visa and immigration application. You have a 40-point system, and 30 every of these is a 10 point. So every component, qualification, academics, English language, maintenance, all 10 points each. And then you have to this is a particular link that you can use, and this is going to stay on the page, so you can always, and I can also paste the links later on the comment box. And then you have a visa fee, and to me it was exorbitant visa fee, so be very careful about, very prepared about what the visa fees are. Okay, so the visa applications is processed by local application agencies. For me, it was VFS Global. Then once you apply, you have to give them the CAS number, English language certificate, your highest degree certificate. And very interestingly, for only like health checkup, UK only requires you to have TB test results that you are all right with your tuberculosis. And there is something called ATAS certificate. It is optional. It is called academic, I think, technology and academic certificate. And mostly in the UK, especially in humanities and literature, you won't need this certificate. Then what you have to do, apart from your visa fees, you have to pay immigration healthcare surcharge. That means once you come to the UK, you have to also register at the National Health Service, that is the national NHS. And for it, you have to pay for your yearly basis. And that is £300 per year. So if you're planning for 3 years, then £900 you have to pay. And if you plan to stay another year, after PhD, you can stay 1 year. And now I think it is being extended to 3 years. So anytime, as long as you are in the UK, you have to pay £300 per month. Sorry, per year for your immigration healthcare surcharge. After that, you don't have to pay once you meet your GP, etc. And now about visa, when can you apply? You can apply for visa 3 months before the start date. So if it is September you're going for, then from September, like August, July, June, you can apply in June. And then visa is issued 14 days before the start date. Visa will be given to you much before, but it will only be valid 14 days from the start date. So if it is September 13th, September 14th, then your start date is, then the visa will be from September 1. It's only when September 1 you can come to the UK. And once you come to the UK, you have to collect your biometric residence permit, BRP card. And you have to collect it within 10 working days of arriving in the UK. And finally, how is life in the UK? Because I thought that these are all going to be technical requirements, but what is it that you feel about being in the UK? And I'm planning to do something more, as I said, drafting a research proposal and life in the UK more at length later on, generally. So it's going to be a cold climate, a temperate and cold climate, a harsh cold climate if you are in the northern part. October to March and April is going to be very cold. And if you are from the sort of sultry sort of other parts, like hot and sultry parts of the world, but if you're from the EU, you already know what you're expecting. And then sunnyish May till September, of course, very sunny, is an oxymoron in the UK, but sunnyish and beautiful and gorgeous, as you see sometimes in your sort of screens, in your sort of advertisements and films, etc. Expect people to smile at you, pause cars to let you cross the street, which is very interesting, I found in the UK, and I really admire them do that. But at the same time, mostly people may not talk to you, and that's not people's fault or your fault. It's just a student population. Students are so overbearing everywhere that I'm not very sure how much they sort of have the time to even converse with the public around, but people might have taken interest in you if you want to have sort of a conversation, etc. So expect some of these things. Of course, the cultural differences. uh, for me, somebody who has come from India, very quiet nightlife, I would say. Like, think about the nightlives in Bombay, Calcutta, big cities, or even tinier cities. Very vibrant, dynamic, well lit, etc. But it's very quiet nightlife, and mostly people, and most shops will close at or by 6 p.m. And of course, shops such as restaurants and pubs and maybe sort of entertainment sort of areas such as malls, etc. Not malls, but cinema halls, theaters might be open till midnight, but most of the shops, including supermarkets, will close by 6 p.m. Not the grocery stores, super stores, etc. They will be sort of open till 10 or 11. Then plenty of international students you can see on campus and around. Certain cities such as London or Birmingham will have a racially diverse population. You'll notice that, but certain cities very less so. So think about that as well. Expect long library hours, and expect something that is key to PhD in the UK is independent work. Do not expect a lot of plot courses and sort of your supervisor already taking care of you almost on a daily basis or even a weekly basis. Expect independent work and sort of monthly contact with supervisors. That's something you're expecting here. You're expecting also a handful of friends. It's not that you can have the whole world as friends. Of course you can have, depending on, but 3 years of PhD, and you'll realize that because you're spending a lot of time in libraries and in academic settings, etc., and people like mostly in the UG and PG will just leave. So you're left with a few PhD students, and it's also about forming friendships, forming communities. Not going to be many. And of course, with PhDs, lots of frustration sharing. I don't want to get into that because I just like, I had my, I we're always frustrated. That's what I gather from my academic life. And then strong community building and professional skills. That's something that I've learned from the PhD, that because it's like a handful of friends, there are challenges, many challenges. You finally get to build a community, strong community, and very strong professional skills to talk to people. This is a professional skill, to talk to people, to not be scared of taking up maybe like a new challenge, not be scared to even do something, organize something. These are things that you will learn much more coherently, I think, in the UK or in an experience abroad. And then expect excellent and truly diverse PhD cohort. Something that I am always very happy about, that my PhD cohort had people from every as far away countries as possible. I can imagine, which I could never have in my own country. So that's something and you get to know so many different experiences. You get to know. I think you become more patient as a listener, as a human being, and more tolerant, I think. So this is, and of course, expect competitive atmosphere, because everybody is excellent. Everybody is trying to sort of make something new, something much more exciting. Now, the final two bits: post Brexit funding cuts. As I said in the fees and funding cuts will continue. And not only funding cuts, but also social tension, racial tension will continue. Though the UK and every country is trying their best to make sure that the students come, etc. But, and to me, I think things have become, I think in the UK, my personal experience has become much, I would rather say, much more acceptable than others. But this might vary, and this might not be the same for everybody. So social tension is something, because you are expecting a lot of cultural differences. You're expecting post Brexit sort of atmosphere as well. You're experiencing a post coronavirus atmosphere. So social tension will also be on the rise. And finally, I would end it up with, on us, comparatively sort of, I think, positive, I don't know, point was to not make things positive, but to give you as many pieces of information as possible. So plenty of part-time possibilities for you in the UK. But the problem is, these are all restricted to visa restrictions, which is 20 hours a week. Most of your sort of things that you will apply to will be restricted to your visa conditions. So also think about this thing as you move ahead. But mostly, as I said in the beginning, that it is an exciting experience. An experience of a PhD outside of your country is always going to equip you with a lot of learning and professional skills. And you probably will have chance of becoming a much more confident speaker and academic later on. So this is the presentation that I wanted to do, and I'm happy to take any questions that you have from right on. So thank you so much for listening. And I'll just stop the sharing right now and get back to any questions that you may have. Thank you. Right. So I can see that there are already a few questions. So I'll go one by one, whatever I see on my chat box. So I can see a question from, um, can you also talk? So I'm just, as I said, I'm just making sure that the questions are on the screen so that everybody can see them. And if this video remains, so everybody from elsewhere can also, some of the questions already asked, or I don't have to repeat later on. So this is Shruti Das, who asks, can you also talk about scholarships for course in humanities? Thank you so much, Shruti. And as I said, these are the scholarships not only for English literature, but also mostly for humanities subjects. So when you apply for a scholarship in the UK, for instance, maybe like a Chancellor's International Scholarship I had in University of Warwick, I didn't apply. The scholarship was not, the competition was not at all about uh, English language and literature department. The competition was university wide. They said that there were 25 to 30 scholarships, and there were sciences, business studies, um, humanities, social sciences, around 40, 50 departments within all these things. And I'm sure like with scholarships, what happens is there are four schools, especially in Glasgow: College of Arts, College of Social Sciences, uh, College of Engineering, and College of Medicine. And then there are like within then School of Law, etc., School of business studies. So what happens is I'm sure like with funding bodies, they remember to sort of distribute them, if not equally, then substantially to every college. So you are actually competing with maybe 4, 5 to 6 scholarships where 10, 15 departments have participated, and list of maybe 30 we're talking about 10 departments, the list may be 30 students. You're actually maybe competing with 30, 35, 40 students. I don't know, these numbers are not exhaustive, of course, because I don't have the data with me, but what I gathered is that you're competing with so they have drawn up a list, they have done a cutoff, and they have given you why they're sort of, what kind of procedure they're using. So that is how you are applying there. So it's not for English language and literature scholarship, but it might be that somebody else has done much better from history or from philosophy, or maybe from fine arts, from languages, from modern languages. What are all the subjects that constitute the humanities area. So that's the scholarship. So make sure that you check up the websites, you have a very clear understanding of the websites, and you talk to your supervisors, prospective supervisors and conveners, to know more about what kind of scholarships are available for you. Right. So I'll now move on to the other questions. um, right. So this is the other question that Samuel Roy asks, that could you elaborate about Cambridge, Pearson, and Trinity grading scales? I am not very sure about their grading scales because I did not myself take these tests, but on Glasgow's University of Glasgow's page, and every other university page, I just checked with Warwick and also with Manchester, and also with Oxford and Edinburgh, all of their pages, their university pages, especially if you go for research, postgraduate research courses, and postgraduate English language, sorry, postgraduate courses, they have very clear, well documented postgraduate, undergraduate courses. And there they have a particular section called English language requirements. And there you get a full data of what is the standardized score that they are expecting from you. So for me, for Warwick, I thought it was 7.7 or 7.5 in English in IELTS, and in TOEFL it was 105 or something. But it might just be different now. And it in Cambridge and Pearson and Trinity, they have their grading skills also. They're up there. I've checked them with Warwick and Manchester. They're up there already. So just make sure that you know about their sort of skills. But it's not going to be very high, and these are all scales compatible with each other. So it's not going to be very high, and it's don't take it as a huge challenge. Is English language requirements is just like formality for many of you interested in literature and language, that you have been doing literature and language for long. It's not going to be literature at all, mostly about language, and these are going to be easy questions about listening, writing, reading, etc. So just make sure that you have a look up on their pages. Samya adds another question: will we need transcripts for BA as well? Yes, you will need transcripts for everything that you have done from BA, since BA, MA, MPhil, everything that you have done until your application date. So universities will need your. So for me, I had to collect mine from Calcutta University for my BA transcripts, and then from Jadavpur University for my MA transcripts, because I'm from Bengal in India. So any university you are from, I'm sure you'll already have plenty of, so the departments will have sort of a particular section on transcripts. So please talk to them and make sure that they you have enough time, as I said, enough time in hand, because they might take longer to sort of process this transcripts. And currently at this point of time, with um, with the coronavirus situation and with contact hours and time, etc., I'm sure like universities in the UK will also know of these challenges internationally and might want you to take more time. But if you are planning at some point, even if next year, then make sure that you have enough time in hand when you do these applications. Right. Okay. So Manjari asks, Manjari Thakur, hello sir, we're applying for scholarship. They ask for a SOP or a sort of proposal, if I'm not wrong. I know that all of them have different requirements, but if you could shed some light on that, of course. So what happens is in the UK, first of all, thanks Manjari for the question. So what happens in the UK is that we don't, I think here it's not called SOP, it's more of a US requirement, statement of purpose. They call it research proposal in the UK. Now what happens is in the proposal, as I said in the topic section, that the proposal needs to be about 1,000 words, and I'm going to be talking about the proposal later in a particular session. But the research proposal needs to be about the topic, why you have chosen the topic, and kind of the kind of work, the previous work that has been done, the literature review part that has been done on the topic, and what are your research questions, and what are the things you are going to be bringing to the terrain, to the field. What is it that is going to be exciting about your work? And this is something. So what happens is most of the universities in the UK will want you to have some sort of a research proposal. This is not an absolutely compulsory component, but as I said, most of the universities will want you to have a research proposal. It is precisely because your PhD work is going to be based on some topic, and without not knowing the topic, your supervisors, of course, the university and the supervisor and the department who sort of gives you green signal, they will not consider your application, right? So the research proposal is going to be compulsory. And if I get your question correctly, then you said like I know that all of them have different requirements, but so as I said, like they might have different requirements, but a decent research proposal with taking care of all these components and not written more than between 1,000 and 2,000, still all right, not longer, is going to be key. That is, I mean, in Glasgow they want research proposal is a compulsion. In every other university I applied to, research proposal was compulsory. So keep that in mind. So this is Ananya Bhattacharya. Can you also talk about summer and winter schools in UK? Summer and winter schools are something that I like for PhD work. I'm not of course, talking about today, but there are plenty of summer and winter schools. I mean, I remember in Warwick, where I was doing my PhD, from the Department of English and Comparative Literary Studies, they had a summer school on world literature. Sorry, they had a was it a summer school? They had a summer school, I think, the summer school on world literature. And this world literature summer school, it was maybe like 3 to 5 working days, maybe like for a week, but it drew a lot of students from elsewhere, from different parts of the world. And there are always something or the other going on in terms of summer schools. So Edinburgh will have something, Glasgow, and last year, if everything had been all right, then maybe in July we would have something with the summer school from the Department of English called Fantasy. So the Department of English Literature in Glasgow has a particular expertise in fantasy related courses, and they had a summer school organized, like sort of prepared for July, I think. And now that these plans have now all been sort of washed over by the virus situation, so there are going to be plenty of summer and winter schools in the UK, and these are going to be mainly in between July and September, and then in winter sometime, maybe in the Easter time, maybe in April, because from May onwards there's plenty of other things going on. Right. So putting another question here. In case of English language requirements, am I supposed to give one of those tests or more than one? No, of course, one test, just one test. You are not supposed to take any other. Once you're done with the test and you have a satisfactory score and you pass their requirement, that's done. You don't have to take any other tests. Any one of those 4 or 5, university pages will have which tests they sort of consider all right. Then another question here. How open are English departments to accept interdisciplinary topics which also have different genres of literature as a central thematic? Very open. I would rather say very, very open. I mean, most of the times what is happening is in the UK, I'm not sure about other countries, but in the UK, they're very much encouraging of interdisciplinary topics in your area of literature. So I would rather say that topics that are recent, topics that are not so recent, but topics that generally draw on different fields. It could be something like sports and literature, or maybe, as I said, medical humanities, health humanities, environmental humanities, digital humanities. These are some of the areas that in the last few years have become more sort of breakthrough and more demanding. But at the same time, if you just do something like life sciences and literature in Augustan, like Restoration period England, or even if you want to do like a comparative study between um, English and Brazilian literary texts during a particular period, how they responded to the situation of um, sort of some sort of a catastrophe or apocalypse or anything like that has some sort of a original knowledge or contribution. Supervisors will be very keen, and people know where research is moving to. People know, faculty members know where research is moving to. They're also interested in dealing with, or sort of taking them on. So we absolutely rest assured that these are going to be encouraged throughout. So Abhijit Maiti asks, as you said, we must make sure that a fair amount of money is required for tuition fees and so on. Now, is this also in the case of partial fundings? Yeah, this is another good question. Thank you. So what happens is, in the UK, you have either full-time, sort of you are either a full-time student or a part-time student. Now, if you are a full-time student, as I showed in the PowerPoint presentation, then you pay like 4,400 before you start your first year. If you are a part-time student, you pay 2,600 or something. And as a full-time student, your course is your PhD is 3 years long. And as a part-time student, your course program is 5 years long. Now, if you are paying for, if you have to pay for on your own, then either you pay the full-time in the beginning or you pay for the part-time. If you are being paid for partially by, let's say, a housing society or a bank or a student loan body or something that you have brought from your own country, then if it is like half of your tuition fees, then if you're planning for a part-time or a full-time, then the rest of the tuition fees has to be done, like raised by you. So make sure that whatever program you follow, be it part-time or be it full-time, you make sure that whatever the fees are, you know about the fees and you know about where you are raising from. If your society, student sort of housing society, allows you half of the fees, make sure that you know the rest of the fees will be paid by you on a 5-year basis or a 3-year basis. So that's the case of partial. There is no partial funding as such for the UK universities. You have to pay the tuition fees in full. I mean, of course, there might be cases of installments. That's a different thing that you need to know, that you need to talk to universities directly, what their tuition fee payment situations are. But as much as I know, whatever you are paying, you pay in full in the beginning of the course. In the beginning, maybe a month or maybe a weeks before you start the course, not later or anything like that, or not in sort of partial in the sense that you pay and then you might pay in the second year, rest of them. No. Okay, another question from Onnesha. If I reject CAS for one time because of any personal grievance, etc., do I need to go through the whole process again for the next time? Yes. Unfortunately, that is so. CAS is generated for just once, and that has a unique number. That's for you. Maybe it'll have your sort of name and surname, AR, etc. there. So it's for you. And this CAS will be then used by the visa authorities and their UKVI bodies. And by clicking on the link, it will then take straight away to your application that you did for that particular session. So if you plan to defer for any reason that you have, and you are welcome to defer, and in this particular situation, universities are being very kind, and everybody knows that students might defer. So if you plan to defer, then you might have to then ask the HR, the university, to issue another CAS. It doesn't take a lot of time, maybe, but of course, CAS generation is slightly more complex than just having a like a link from the university. So the HR, it depends on which month you are applying to as well, which particular corridor, like the window you are applying to. If it is in July, August, that's when most of the uni students from different parts of the world will apply. So it is going to probably take maybe like 5 to 10 working days. If you're applying maybe sometime in, let's say, April or May, where the student inflow is low, then it might take, let's just 2 working days. It depends, but it will take some time, and you'll be given like a new CAS every time you sort of reject or defer or do something different. Even with a deference, I believe a new CAS needs to be generated, because you're starting now not from the September one, but from the June one, and the visa office needs to know when you start so that they can issue the visa, the biometric residence permit. So every time something new happens with your course, a new CAS needs to be generated. So yes, I did, Jigisha. I answered your first question, and just to be sure that universities are very happy to have their prospective PhDs work on interdisciplinary topics. So you can just always see it later on as well. Just for time's sake, I'll just move on with other questions. Right. So Risheen asks, I happen to be a student of a completely different subject than yours. Is the procedure same for the other subjects? For example, botany, yes, the procedure is the same for every subject you come from. Doesn't matter whether you are in humanities, in the sciences, in business or law. The procedure is the same. Fees will, of course, be different. So for humanities, if the fees are like 18,000 pounds a year, for sciences or for business studies it might be higher, around 30,000, depending on what kind of equipment you will be using. This equipment may, as you know, may sort of range from laboratories and then excursions, etc. So of course, some of these logistics, like like cosmetic parts, rather say, will change, but the procedure will remain the same for everybody throughout, from a PhD, as I said, from PhD, finding a supervisor, finding out English language skills, English language requirements, to visa, to getting this particular BRP, everything will remain the same. Ananya asks, are there scholarships available in Commonwealth countries for summer and winter schools in the UK? What is the eligibility? I'm not too sure if there are scholarships available for summer and winter schools in the UK. I'm not very sure, because most of the scholarships from Commonwealth countries are for PhD and master degree. There are very few even undergraduate level scholarships, very few. So most of them are going to be definitely a sort of, PhD, like longer degree. And if you're there for only study abroad or exchange or a winter school, I believe that you have to pay, or maybe like, raise your funding from elsewhere. But there might be local funding bodies that I don't know of, but most of the cases, university winter schools, most of the cases, summer and winter school fundings are not provided by the universities which are organizing these things. Maybe there is a reduction or a waiving of sort of the tuition fees, but this is going to be mostly raised by students. So you might also want to check with local bodies if there are any local body that is going to be sort of helping you with your winter or summer school funding. Right. There is a question by Asma. So do you think I can, as a student, cope with the challenge on all so many levels? I know that's subjective, but okay. I've read your first part. Just for here, I just want to make sure that viewers see that the first part had sort of the challenges, right? Okay. And the second part is about the challenge coping with. Now this is huge, okay, and as you say yourself on the question, that this is a very subjective question, that some people may cope very well, some people may not, and there are plenty of other things going on. You are not a robot, right? You are a human being, and you are changing from a very rooted atmosphere you have grown up with, and a country that you have grown up with, that you have grown up in, with people around, etc. You're coming to a completely new country at at an age when you have barely become adult, and now uh, you are on your own. So all this sound might sound horrifying, or sort of very stressful, traumatic, but it might just be that throughout your life you have also been facing up a lot of challenges from your school till your PG, but you have not just changed the country. What you are doing right now is that you are coming to another new set of challenges while you have changed the country. So it has the positive part is it makes you more independent, it makes you stronger, it makes you, this whole PhD experience, I mean, it makes you more confident as a speaker, makes you more confident as a presenter, or it just might work not for you. It is something that is a very subjective thing. And a PhD, because it's a more, as I said in the presentation, it's more of an independent sort of a talk, more of an independent initiative, more of an independent project, where you are not seeing your um, cohorts as you do in a taught course, right? And an MA, that you are seeing that you have friends, and these friends become your friends. You choose friends precisely because you're already given 30, 40 friends in a classroom. Now you are suddenly coming to a PhD program where you know that your cohort is going to be small, like 9, 10. Now you get to know about other people, the other cohorts, and you get to see people. There are, these are different countries we're talking about. You say you're from, so, if you're from India, or if you're from Kashmir, you are from Bengal, you're from, these are different ways of dealing with people, different ways of talking to people. And then you come to a different country. So every country has its rhythm. I wouldn't say that India is better in that sense than the UK. I've seen how lonely and pathetic international students feel in Indian institutions. So it might be the same for some of us who are coming to another, but because UK has a more diverse population already, it might help you. Who knows? So, do marks make a difference in the selection process, or is the proposal given more emphasis? It's another very important question, I think. Marks are going to be your first eligibility. If you are not getting a consistent track record, because you have to send your CV, university and sort of different funding committees will see that. And believe me, this is, as you can imagine, probably it's a very competitive field. And if somebody has got like a more consistent, then they'll probably have more faith in. But they'll also see what you have done recently. If you have done a better academic record in your master degree, or in your ELT score, or in your research, and you show like you have already done like some publications, or maybe, who knows, I'm not talking about international publications, maybe some sort of initiatives, some conferences, seminars, and then you have a very strong research proposal. They can now see that you are really progressing, and they'll not judge you based on what you did or did not do in your BA, or in your even in your first year MA, etc. So, as I said, marks will have a say, but they'll also see the sort of the progression, the career-wise progression that you have made. And I think that funding bodies, they're always, that they're happy to bring in newer challenges, newer students, newer perspectives. It's just that they need to see something interesting about you. So Nivedita asks, can you tell us more about the scholarship and how to make a list of the supervisors? Yes, thank you. So what you do is, so about scholarships. So when I applied 2013, not very far away, I didn't apply for Commonwealth scholarships. I'm from India, so I was allowed for Commonwealth scholarships in the UK, and Felix scholarships and Rhodes, etc. These are the scholarships from India. As I said in the presentations, there are country-specific scholarships. So Commonwealth, Felix, Rhodes, Inlex, these are scholarships that are there for Indian candidates in the UK applying for a PhD or a master degree in the UK. Now there might be China, as I said, China Scholarship Council, and then Said Foundation. These are all country specific scholarships. Because I didn't apply for the Indian scholarships for some reason, I think my PhD topic was not talking about Indian situation as such and Commonwealth. There was some sort of a requirement that your PhD topic had to do something to do with your country, what you give back, etc. So I was not, and I didn't know about the procedure as well. So what happened is I searched for scholarships that are in-house. That means that the universities or the country provides where I'm applying to. That means the UK scholarship. So what I found is that most of the funding body scholarships, and this remains true even today, most of the funding body scholarships are for home students, by which I mean UK or EU students. Okay, so AHRC, Arts and Humanities Research Council, is the largest funding body for this kind of scholarships for students, faculties, and research scholars, postdoctorals, etc., in the UK, especially in the humanities domain, as you can understand by the name. So, arts and humanities, all these scholarships were for home and EU students. Similarly, Leverhulme scholarships. There are, when I joined, Leverhulme started a doctoral training program, DTP scholarships. They were also for home and EU students. And then British Academy had a scholarship for some time for home and EU students. And then again, some other scholarships, I don't remember. Most of the funding body scholarships were from home. So only one scholarship I had, which was not for home students, but also from a funding body, nationwide funding body. It's the Wolfson Foundation. So they give you, in the humanities, I mean, they give you one scholarship in literature, one scholarship in language, one scholarship in history, and everybody can compete for that. Home, EU, overseas, everyone. So as you understand, it's going to be a very, very high competition, but there is at least a door, a sort of a a door open. And then there was another one, Welcome Trust, but my work was not back then was about medicine, so or health. So in that sense, Welcome Trust, I believe in the last few years they have also got a few scholarships for PhD students, and I think from India or some other countries people can apply, but I'm not too sure. You can always check with their site, the Welcome Trust Foundation. And then for postdoctoral candidates, people have, there is something called the Newton fellowships that international candidates can apply. So these are, like, as I said, what you can gather from my sort of examples is that these are mostly for home and EU students, or if you have done your PhD in the UK, if you are a postdoc, etc. And chances for getting a scholarship for overseas students are very few and far between. Now, what I found out later on is that universities, specific universities, had their own scholarships. Unfortunately, some of them are sort of full sort of tuition fees and maintenance based. Some of them are might just be about just tuition fees. So I remember there was one scholarship in English called Bonamy Dobry Scholarship in University of Leeds, which was for international students as well, but only for tuition fees. So uh, that means that you have to pay a good amount of money in for your maintenance, which is not going to be like any less than the standards of annual tuition fees, especially cost of living in the UK. So that is something you need to remember, that some universities will have their specific, and as of now, if I remember well enough, Warwick still has, I checked with their page today, Warwick still has their Chancellor's International Scholarship, which is for everybody, as you can understand, international scholarship. Then Oxford and Cambridge, they have their in-house a few scholarships from for international students from their own funds. I think Oxford had something called from the John Fell Fund. I don't remember exactly what it's called. Then Cambridge had something called Cambridge Smuts Fellowship or Scholarship. Then then of course the Gates Foundation had a very good number of scholarships for Cambridge University students, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. And then Cambridge also had something, I think Nehru Cambridge Fellowship or something like that. So Oxford and Cambridge, they have their a little more funds because they're wealthier than the other universities. Then Edinburgh will have, Edinburgh had sort of a in-house scholarship. Glasgow has an in-house scholarship for international students. Manchester has an in-house scholarship. I'm not too sure if that is for maintenance as well, but definitely a tuition fee scholarship. Liverpool has one. York has one. Leeds, as I just said, has one. And then UCL will have something called Global. Back that the time I applied, they had something called Global Scholars or Global Fellows Scholarship, and then sort of Overseas Fellow Scholarship. So these are going to be university specific scholarships, especially from universities that are comparatively wealthier, that have some funds, that have some endowments from within, they can raise money, etc. So just check with the universities so that you understand, so that you know like what is happening there. Himanshu says, is it necessary to contact a faculty member with proposal before applying somewhere? No, it is not absolutely necessary. As I said, it is not a compulsion, but it helps to know who you will be working with and what their interests are. A conversation with your prospective supervisor might just give you some sort of a ground about what new work could be done, or how to sort of improvise the research proposal before applying for funding within the university. And you also know who you are talking to, how this person is, etc. And some sort of a, let's say, a conversation, some sort of a uh, getting to know each other well enough. So it is not, as I said, it is not a formal compulsion, but I would encourage you to do that. And about, I think Nivedita also had a question about list of supervisors. I missed that. So list of supervisors is when you go check. My suggestion will be go to every university faculty pages. Go to their pages and see who are the faculty members, like who can, of course, sort of take PhD students, mostly full-time faculty members, but some faculty members part-time might also take, or even postdoctoral fellows can take. You just have to find out, talking to them or the PG convener. Go to the university pages and see their faculty pages, and this probably be called staff or faculty, something like that. So, or people. Go to these pages and see who is compatible with your interest areas, and then you'll also see what they have published there, what they have worked, and what is their research. They'll also have their email address, and you can also talk to them straight away, writing an email to them. So just have a list of them going to university websites. All right. So Shushmita asks, can anyone apply without a first class in MA? And secondly, could you talk about theoretical framework part in research proposal? Yes. First of all, you can always apply with any division that you have had, be it a first class, be it. As I said in the other question that was asked, that your MA track record or your BA track record, they're going to be very important, but you will also be seen, they'll also see what kind of a progression, career progression you have made, like academic or sort of qualifications that you have got, and you have got like a progressive um, sort of increase, or some sort of an interesting things that have been added to your CV, be it like you're interested, as I said, you're interested in theater, you are doing theater or something like that. So this is universities will judge you on all round capabilities, not only about your just MA results. And then about the theoretical framework part in research proposal, I'm going to be talking about that in the next session sometime in end of July. So tune in if you are interested for that. But about very short, in short, as I said in the topic section, it should have what is the topic, context of the topic, what kind of research has been done on the topic, that is literature review, what are the new things that you are going to be doing. So what are your research questions? What are the findings that you are sort of aiming after? And then what is the methodology you will be using in order to read or in order to do your research? And then your plan. What is going to be your chapter plan? These are all tentatives. Don't have to think about right now that these are going to be the same for the next 3 years. No, just to give your supervisor or yourself an idea that what is the trajectory. And then the scope, what is it that what is the originality, what is it that it is going to contribute. So these are the components, these are the theoretical framework of a research proposal. So Srishti asks, how much do you think it's a disadvantage to study Indian lit and English in a German university versus a British university? Again, a great question. Thank you. So, what happens is for me, I would rather say that this shouldn't be a disadvantage, right? But you never know the kind of expertise that the university and the faculty members and the resources have, the kind of libraries that they have. So you say that. So for German universities, I do not have a hand-to-hand experience, of course, but what I have friends and what I gather from so people who are studying in Heidelberg or elsewhere is that they've got tremendously good library support, resources support, which is, I think, when I say that, I'm saying like South Asian or Indian literature related or South Asian history related support, comparative literature related support. It depends on what kind of research topic that you have chosen. If you have chosen a research topic that deals with 18th or 19th century archival work, and you find that Heidelberg has a much better situation there, or even sort of Munich or something else, then it's a great opportunity to even to apply to German universities, and they might be very interested in taking you there. And I don't know about the German scholarship or funding system. I'm sure they will also be in written in English, or you can always translate them into English, and they'll also be very clear on the pages as well if they want you to have if they have their scholarship or funding what is there. But I think your question is not only about funding and scholarship, it's also about the advantage and disadvantage. For me, if you're applying for an Indian lit related topic in a British university, as you understand from the relationships that India has with Britain historically, most of the archives, most of the literary documents, etc., will be housed in India, in Britain, and many of them will be housed in India. So if you're coming to Britain and you can say that your topic is something that relates to or that has archives or resources in the British Library, in the National Library of Scotland, you have to, of course, you have to sort of browse them. And then you can always make it into a very strong advantage point because the whole country will have then resources. And there is a history of people working on Indian lit in literature and English in the UK. So you'll also have the libraries equipped with a number of books and resources, individual university libraries, I mean. So that might sort of offer you an advantage there, or it might be a disadvantage. A university in Germany might have even more because I what I understand from some of my friends based in Denmark, Sweden, and Germany, that they've got like absolutely fantastic resource houses, and the kind of uh, it's going to be stressful everywhere, but the kind of uh, sort of diversity that people will come, and the amount of tension and frustration that it will generate, the kind of competition, I mean, is very high in the UK. And that's what I wanted to make sure that you know about, that these advantages and disadvantages in a qualitative manner as well. Right. So Govindo asks, is it possible to apply for PhD in UK of a permanent faculty? Secondly, will the supervisors in UK accept Indian-oriented topic, I mean Indian writers in English? As I said in the beginning, that universities, especially if it is like a literary topic, universities and faculty members will be interested in any kind of topic that interests you, as long as this topic shares some interest with the faculty member, and as long as this topic gives offers something new to look forward to. Remember that part very well. They're not even not at all. Don't feel that your topic is not compatible. Your topic is as compatible as you make it or sound it or make it look like. And then if it is sort of compatible with, let's say, a university faculty member's research interest, then they will be very happy to sort of converse with you and take it forward later on as well, the conversation and the interest, etc. Right, right. So Manjari is, so you ask that the question was specifically about departmental or institutional scholarships which require a separate proposal, like chancellors or Gates, Cambridge. Now these are specific areas, right? So for instance, if you are applying for a gates, I had not applied for a gates Cambridge, so I don't know about what requirements they have. But chancellors, you had to give, as you mentioned, you had to give a research proposal. Now you, in order to get a job, like you, in order to get a PhD offer, which is pretty much like a job in the UK system, though you are not paying any taxes, but unlike maybe like the German system, etc. So what happens is, you are applying for, if you're offered a PhD position, that means that you already have a research proposal. So research proposals in that sense are compulsory for universities. But if now you're applying for a funding, as I said, this universe, only a few handful of universities will have their own in-house fundings. In the same way that you're applying for Gates, which is an external scholarship, like Commonwealth, which is an external. So you have to apply. You have to send your research proposals there as well. Chancellor's International Scholarship might already get your research proposal from the application page, right? From the application body, the components. Gates might not. So you might have to then send your, or Commonwealth, for instance, definitely might not. So you might have to send the research proposal again there. So some universities which will mention, for instance, I remember when I applied to Warwick, they mentioned that your application form will have your will that will also consider you for Warwick chancellors. And then I had to apply later. Now that I've got an admission offer, I had to apply later, not entirely independently, because most of the application components are already uploaded. I might just had to supply my research proposal, or maybe like given a little more time to sort of improvise the research proposal. So that's something that might happen with external or internal funding bodies. But for university that have their own internal funding bodies, there are many of these components are already, as I said, are already into the system. They might draw from there. But for external bodies such as Gates and then Commonwealth, they might want you to not reapply, but just send the research proposal. We've given a little more time to improvise on the research proposal, etc. Right. I'll just find out if there are any more questions. Right. So I'll take another couple of questions and then leave the session, close it here. So yes, Samurai asks, a university like Calcutta, especially 1+1+1 system, had a very different marking system, and I have seen that marks not as high as it is given in other universities. Will I face issues? Now, this is something it's a very important question, and I also had a similar sort of anxiety related, because some of the universities in India, they are very conservative with marks, and some of them are sort of not so conservative, right? So most of these universities, like Calcutta University, or maybe like Delhi University or Hyderabad, etc., people have been applying for maybe like centuries, so they know what the marking system is. So when I applied to a particular university, they knew that a 2:1, that means higher second class is considered a first class, like a merit in not of so there are distinctions such as first class, second class, as you know already. So considered a merit in 2:1, that is a merit in the UK. So that's not going to take anything away from you. They already know about the marking system in India. And if you get higher, they also know about that as well. It's not going to be like immensely stressful or difficult for you to get through, because as I said, they would know even from somebody applying from Australia or elsewhere. They would also know about these things, because the data is there in their system for a long time. People have been applying for Calcutta University for a long time, so that's not a problem. Will you face issues? No, I don't think you will face issues. Right, this is the final question. And for after that, if you have any question, as I say, I'll just feel free to leave these questions in the comments box, and I'll respond to them as I have time. And make sure that if you're interested, make sure that you also share this with your friends and with your sort of colleagues or peers or students, whoever is around, so that they also get to know about some of these components, some of these aspects of applying for PhD in the UK. So as a CU student, I didn't have any dissertation, thesis, term papers for my MA. Very short, very theoretical course. Okay, so will that be a hindrance for my PhD applications? Again, a great question. Thank you. So that will not be a hindrance. Now, for me, I would say that I had an MPhil degree. Okay, so an MPhil degree had a thesis or a dissertation, a longer thesis or a dissertation. And what happens is that's like a 40,000. So what happens is automatically uh, student, like funding committee supervisors, they get to see that you have done some thesis related homework. But if you have done a 2 year MA and have taken like so many courses, supervisors will also know, and as well as universities, that you have already done 3 years of BA and then or BSc or whatever, and then 2 years of MA. So what happens is you already have the coursework. 2 years of MA is the coursework that you were supposed to be doing in before you appear for sort of the PhD. If you have a dissertation, it helps precisely because you are already exposed to the tool, to the body, to the thing that you're going to be doing later on in a much larger, longer sort of a scenario in a PhD. So that helps. But as I say, that does not take away from the fact that you have done your MA and you have done your BA and you're already ready for a PhD. So it doesn't take away. In Britain, there is a 1 year MA, and there are two sessions, as I said, spring and autumn. That's when they take two courses or four courses each, and then sort of there are some credits that you do. So basically taught courses, two programs. Okay, and then after that, in the summer session, you're given about 3 months to write a dissertation, 3 or 4 months to write a dissertation, and the dissertation is, I think, around 15,000 words in terms of length. So people know already, but but in Britain also there is an undergraduate thesis which is like 12,000 words long or something like that. So what happens is people already know, are exposed to the dissertation situation or a thesis situation. So that's precisely why they do not want a PhD coursework program. You're already doing MA, you have already been prepared, you're already exposed to thesis dissertation, and that kind of sort of already enables you to take up now a higher degree like a PhD. Now, what happens for international students is that they have all done everything, but it's just that they are not exposed to the thesis and dissertation. So as long as you have done some term papers, you have written something longer than just taken exams, you might make your case much more stronger, that I've already done term papers, I'm already exposed to some of these aspects, and I believe that I'm ready for a PhD thesis. And because I've done like 10,000 or 8,000 word term papers, I know that PhD thesis chapters are 15 or 20,000, 10 to 15,000 words long. So I already know how to like get exposed to some of this. So my suggestion to you will be that if you're interested in applying for PhD without a dissertation, then make sure that you make a case out of your limitations. Like if you are limited in that case, you are not exposed to a dissertation or thesis as yet, then make sure that you have something from your MA coursework which you now channelize and which you now make into a case for your sort of coherent or a cogent sort of a research proposals. That okay, I might not have, don't write that you do not have a dissertation, might just like I have a term paper which makes me already exposed to this particular field. I have already written a term paper on this particular field, which is even much better. So think about that, how to use some of your limitations to your own and better ends. Okay, so right. So I'll just have to stop here for today. And I would like to thank you so much, all of you who had the time to participate to this particular initiative and event. And thank you so much also for giving me your, like, us sending me your questions. And I'm sure that this kind of an event might be of help to many of you, and it will be there in YouTube as well. Feel free to sort of share it with friends, and also feel free to subscribe to the channel and make sure that you have a track of the next event that I do. And the next event is going to be on drafting a research proposal, so it might be of help to you. So today's event. So thank you so much, and you take care.